part 2 of learning about toxic heavy metals. In this part, we're going to be learning about examples of toxic copper exposure, herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, tattoos, mercury in fish and seafood, vaporized heavy metal, spinal taps, and tongue discoloration. So if you're interested in that, this is the video for you. All right, let's get started. So we're gonna start with examples of toxic copper exposure. Copper is often in pipes, meaning it ends up in our drinking and bathing water, plus it's showing up more and more in kitchenware. Copper mugs and thermoses and water containers are really big right now, purposely created to leach copper into the water as if this were a positive thing. The trend derived from a practice hundreds of years ago in certain parts of the world where water supplies were scarce. Storing water in copper vessels such as copper-lined barrels, copper canisters, or copper pots with a technique to keep certain but not all microbes from proliferating in still water. It was a survival technique. The upside was that water was less contaminated with parasites because the parasites, specifically certain varieties of amoebas, were poisoned by copper. Bacteria and viruses in today's world don't die from copper poisoning. They thrive on copper. The downside of storing water in copper vessels was copper poisoning for the individual consuming the water on a regular basis. It was a trade-off of one evil for a lesser evil. This storage technique could keep somebody from being bent over vomiting and having diarrhea from dysentery from a parasite, even though that did still happen. Killing off parasites with copper wasn't guaranteed. Instead of being sick to their stomach, that person could be functioning, consuming the water, living their life, and developing symptoms and conditions and disease because of the copper toxicity. It was the way to stay alive in certain parts of the world where water was scarce. The choice was to go completely without water for a long period of time or consume water that caused neurological disease while keeping you alive longer. We can't confuse this survival choice with a health-promoting practice. Somehow, we've upgraded this survival tactic to a trend. Like all trends, the details are missing. Little does anyone know that if the trend blows up any bigger, we're going to have more eczema, psoriasis, and psoriatic arthritis cases than ever. We're going to have even more unexplained neurological symptoms and diagnosed diseases. We're going to have worsening of emotional and psychological conditions, high levels of copper toxicity in the brain can cause madness, personality disorder, paranoia, and worsened OCD. Promoters of copper containers for water storage believe that it's healthy because they believe that we're deficient in copper. This thinking deserves to be corrected for two reasons. One, we're not deficient in copper. And two, ironically, the copper thermoses, copper water containers, trendy copper kitchenware, and copper jewelry are all meant to provide you with usable copper. Don't even provide the beneficial, healthy, usable form of copper. They're all made from toxic, industrialized copper, just the same as copper pipes delivering your water. And again, we're not lacking beneficial copper. Most every food we eat has copper, both toxic, industrialized copper, and the healthy trace mineral copper from our soil. Even food produced organically has traces of toxic copper. How does that happen? Most organic growing fields are refurbished conventional growing fields. Depending on the local certification rules, they can usually get the organic designation after 7 years of not spraying conventional pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Meaning copper from pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides stay in the ground for more than 7 years. So both organic crops and conventional crops end up with industrialized toxic copper. There's also healthy copper in every food we eat. Some foods are abundant in it. Copper is a metal we have too much of, both in trace mineral form and toxic industrialized form. No one is void of trace mineral copper. A lack of copper is not why everybody is sick. The fear of deprivation of copper is misleadingly wrong. I paused to get some watermelon juice. So what we just read here, let me get a pen, actually. Where did I get my pen? Oh, it's right here, duh. Where was that? Give me a moment. So just to clarify some last little notes before we go on to herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. When we're reading about the examples of toxic copper exposure, it says most organic growing fields are refurbished, conventional growing fields. Depending on the local certification rules, they can usually get the organic designation after 7 years of not spraying. So if something's labeled organic, it doesn't actually mean it's organic. It means that for the last 7 years at that farm, they haven't used herbicides, pesticides, or fungicides. But that doesn't mean it's not in the soil. So there's still a very, very high chance that herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides are on those crops, okay? Now, let's talk about the sides. Herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides are common sources of many toxic heavy metals, from mercury to lead to copper, cadmium, barium, nickel, and arsenic. Keep in mind that even organic vapor sprays for organic produce have toxic heavy metals within them. Not to mention that organic sprays contain MSG, caffeine, and especially nicotine. So let's just backtrack. I actually did just learn this information a few days ago. Vegetables and produce is being sprayed with nicotine and caffeine right now. So I was just saying I'm gonna read another book on how to change your DNA after this one, because we need help. We need help. This is crazy. You absolutely still eat the fruits and the vegetables and the produce and the whole foods and all the sorts. Don't just all of a sudden go to these excessively processed food. But at the same time, it's we need to do more. We need to change our DNA. We need to rise. We need to rise above this chaos. Okay. The purpose is to paralyze an insect nervous system. All 3 of these chemicals are problematic to the human brain, and it's easy to consume them if you don't wash your organic produce carefully. Crops aren't the only place where fungicides, which are very high in copper and other toxic heavy metals, are sprayed. Industries are using fungicides on clothes, blankets, sheets, furniture, couches, chairs, rugs, and more. Practically everything, especially items that end up close to our skin. Yeah, I actually did know this information, which is why you go into a clothing store and it all stinks. Or maybe you don't experience that quite yet, but once I started to get a certain level of health, a certain level of not eating these highly processed foods, everywhere has a smell. People reek, stores reek, everything is just smells. And that's the fungicide. All right, that was just a quick little blurb. Now we're gonna get into tattoos. Tattoos are a source of toxic heavy metal exposure. Now, I do have 2 tattoos, a butterfly and the chakras, and I didn't know this when I got it. I actually learned about tattoo toxic heavy metal exposure like 2 days after this one, so that was, yeah. I got this one like 6 years ago, and it looks pristine, and I got this one like 3 years ago, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, tattoos are a source of toxic heavy metal exposure. The ink from a tattoo is basically on a time release, leaching metals slowly from the derma into the bloodstream over a lifetime. From the bloodstream, those toxic heavy metals find their way to the brain, where they end up residing in brain tissue. As of today, there are no sources of tattooing that are free of toxic heavy metals, not even tattoo ink that are vegan and cruelty-free. In order for tattoo ink to be seen clearly through the skin, there has to be metals inside the tattoo ink. As light hits your skin from the sun or any source of light, it reflects off the metal inside the tattoo ink under the skin. That reflection allows the tattoo to pop and be seen clearly. As the years go by and tattoos, toxic heavy metals are time released deeper into your bloodstream. Tattoos fade. The light reflecting off of your body ink doesn't have as much to reflect off anymore. Toxic heavy metals within the ink were what gave the tattoo their clarity. If you already have tattoos, you don't have to remove them. Instead, make sure you're following medical medium protocols to sop up and expel the metals as they're time released into the bloodstream, so the metals don't build up in your brain. If you choose to remove a tattoo because you don't like your tattoo anymore, the procedure could release more metal into your bloodstream faster. So follow the heavy metal detox guidance from chapter 44 and 45 would be wise then too. Mercury in food and fish and seafood. Ocean salt water contains an abundance of trace minerals which clash with toxic heavy metals. The ocean is alive. It's composed of living energy from trace minerals floating in it. Ocean minerals are living minerals that are grounding. Toxic heavy metals disrupt this energy. Living minerals and toxic heavy metals don't mix well. They don't run on the same frequency of charge because toxic heavy metals such as mercury have been industrialized. They have changed and become destructive. Industrialized toxic heavy metals such as mercury are on a rogue and radical separate charge that disrupts grounding. Acting as free radicals, these toxic heavy metals alter electrical frequencies and energy wherever they are, our air, our ocean, our body. This conflict causes a mineral-metal separation within fish. That is, the trace minerals and toxic heavy metals within fish, which the fish harbor from living in the ocean, conflict with each other. The minerals and metals can't join together. They react and repel each other. This reaction causes most trace minerals that are inside the fish to end up in the muscle tissue of the fish, while the mercury and other toxic heavy metals absorb into the fat and oil of the fish. This is due to the difference in formation of toxic heavy metals versus minerals. Toxic heavy metals are oddly shaped and denatured through industrialization, so the metals are not in their natural form. Industrialized metal particles, odd-shaped pierce oil, getting stuck and trapped in oil and fat more easily than muscle tissue. As a result, whoa, hold on, I gotta underline this. Yeah, that's totally crazy. I just had to underline that. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, that if toxic heavy metals gets trapped in oil and fat and not so much in muscle tissue, I'm thinking changing that around. I know we're talking about fish, but let's talk about the human being. The less oil we eat, the less fat we are, the more muscle tissue we have, the less metals can even be in our body. I believe that's what it's saying. Because toxic heavy metals like to sit in the fat. So the less fat you have on your body, the less toxic heavy metals are even able to like be around. Especially if you give up oil, which I guess I have. I'm on like the cusp. I'm like, oh God, I like it. It's more like restaurant food, but then I was learning about restaurant food and I'm like, fuck, I can't eat that anymore. Because the fat and oil in the fish tend to absorb the toxic heavy metals, and the presence of those toxic heavy metals repel trace minerals. Absorption in the fish's fat and oil, this leads to fish oil becoming void of nutrients and trace minerals. Oil in fish is supposed to be high in trace minerals. Instead, it's high in radical, damaging metals and extremely low in trace minerals. Let's underline that too, because there is a huge misconception in the nutrition world right now about, yeah, I'll have a bite, about fish oil. I know when I first went vegan when I was like 13 or 14, that was like the biggest concern my family had, is like, what about fish oil? Oh my God, how are you gonna get your fish oil? And I'm like, you guys, we literally live landlocked. At this point, I've never even eaten fish before. I've lived 13, 14 years, never had a piece of fish in my entire life. And now all of a sudden I'm going vegan and they're worried about my fucking fish oil. That's ridiculous. And they didn't even take fish oil. And they're like, but we get it from meat. It's fish oil. You don't get fish oil from a fucking cow. So it didn't even make sense. And then to read, oil in fish is supposed to be high in trace minerals. Instead, it's high in radical, damaging metals, and extremely low in trace minerals. This is why, if you're going to eat fish, choosing less oily fish is your safest bet. In parentheses, you may have heard out there in the health world to eat less oily fish. No one knows the real reason why less oily fish contains less mercury. Leaner fish is not free of toxic heavy metals. Mercury and toxic heavy metals can still end up in other parts of the fish besides the fat and the oil. They're simply most concentrated in the oil and fat of the fish. Fish oil supplements are a common source of toxic heavy metals, in part because mercury and other toxic heavy metals concentrate in the oil, and in part because the extraction process used to produce fish oil supplements destabilizes the mercury in the fish. This destabilization creates a methyl mercury that becomes that much easier for our brain to absorb and that much more potent because of its homeopathic dilution. So you heard it right here. If you're taking fish oil, I'm not telling you to stop taking fish oil, but I am saying maybe you should think about it. Maybe you should do some more research if this isn't your vibe and you're like, what? No, my fish oil. I need my fish oil. Maybe just take a step back and learn about it and think, do you really need your fish oil? I'll tell you, with my fish oil that I took, I did not need that fish oil. My parents were being crazy. Totally crazy and bonkers. I'm like, what? Vaporized heavy metals. And we have 3 more left, okay? Metals fall out of the sky. Toxic heavy metals are in the jet stream. Now, why is this reminding me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? Like, meatballs just like falling out the sky, hamburgers falling out the sky. Nope, it's toxic heavy metals falling out the sky now. They're in the breeze we inhale. Chemtrails expose us to a large amount of metals of all kinds. Petrochemicals coming out of jet planes vaporize metals in the atmosphere, and industries all around the world are releasing toxic heavy metals into the air as they make products for commerce. Winds can carry pesticides and herbicide drift for hundreds of miles. If the weather's just right, wind patterns can carry pesticide drift thousands of miles from continent to continent. Fireworks leave us breathing in toxic heavy metals such as strontium, which I actually haven't heard of that one. Strontium, maybe strontium. We also live with toxic heavy metals in our indoor air. Industries have created ways to vaporize fragrances via plug-in air fresheners, scented candles, and scent diffusers, so that when we breathe in these synthetic fragrances, which can contain toxic heavy metals, among other brain betrayers, the vapors penetrate the sinus cavities the way sniffing cocaine does, allowing these toxic heavy metals to get to the brain. So stop with those plug-in air fresheners. They stink anyway. If you become healthy enough, you'll realize that they all stink. We don't want that in there. If you become healthy enough, you recognize that cologne and perfume and deodorant and shampoos and conditioners and soap and whatever the hell you're using stinks. It stinks. It doesn't smell good. And it causes toxic heavy metal exposure to you because you're the one putting it directly on your skin. And it causes toxic heavy metal exposure to the people around you because you're drifting it into the air. Quit doing that, y'all. If you stink, maybe you should recognize why you stink. Let's get to the root. Why do you stink? Let's start there. Instead of putting on some deodorant and some spray and just smelling like BO plus the toxic heavy metals and fragrances, let's think, why do we stink? And me and Tenzin help y'all with that. We can get to the root cause of why you stink. And it's diet. So we help with that. All right, now spinal taps. I feel like I have never heard of a spinal tap. Maybe I have though. When spinal taps are performed, they don't even look for toxic heavy metals, yet toxic heavy metals are abundant in spinal fluid. Spinal taps are a standard practice that never yields enough information when someone is chronically ill. They're a formality that weakens and traumatizes patients further. That's all it said about that. So personally, I don't feel like it gave me a single understanding of a spinal tap, but if that helped y'all, like what was that?
I think they get the fluid out of there.
The
I don't
fluid?
know what they do. I don't know what they do with it. I'm sure Grey's Anatomy will tell us.
I do know as a licensed massage therapist, I noticed that I believe the spinal fluid is where the lamina groove is, correct? Like here's the vertebrae going down the back, and then here's the vertebrae, and right next to it on both sides is the lamina groove. And that is like highly inflamed in a lot of people, and I feel like it's the spinal fluid.
It's crazy. They take it for testing.
Testing?
Yeah, the cerebral spinal fluid, and then like to think that people are already sick and they're taking that from their body when it really shouldn't be, just for inaccurate tests.
I don't know why you would want to take your spinal fluid out.
They said to diagnose conditions like meningitis,
What?
encephalitis, multiple sclerosis.
And that's the thing, if you guys, like, that's a thing I want to preface. Is that how you say it? Preference. We don't do any of the sorts. Like, we'll give you a chart and we'll say, here, fill this out for the week. What do you eat? And just by knowing what you guys eat, we have a very, very detailed idea, really, of what kind of symptoms and conditions you are probably struggling with. And then we'll also give you a symptoms and condition sheet. And you'll fill it out. It'll say anxiety, depression, brain fog, blah, 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 right? Tongue discoloration. When someone gets dark gray or black discoloration on their tongue, and they're sure food or tobacco didn't stain it, it's a sign of heavy metals deep in organs surfacing. especially mercury and metal-related viral toxins. If you're proactive in cleansing metals and viral toxins, surfacing is a positive sign. If you're not proactive on your level, your body's showing that you have an overload of mercury or metal-related viral toxins overflowing. Depending on where metals and viral toxins are poisoned in your body, you may not experience a black tongue either way. That's the end. And I gotta post a photo because me and Tenzin both got black tongue when we were cleansing. Was it on our juice fast, Tenz? Yeah, it was on our juice fast. We both got black tongue at the same time. And yeah, I'll post that probably on our 4 Energy Instagram that you should be following. All right, and that was the end of chapter 20. So next time, if you're interested in chapter 21, it's gonna be all about fragrances. Alrighty, peace out.